I shouldn't have opened the door that quickly. Midnight knocks usually carry trouble, but when I saw her standing there, hair loose, sweater falling off one shoulder like it couldn't quite hold her, I forgot every thought except the fact that she was here. Her voice was low, almost careful. "I can't sleep alone tonight." The hallway light made her look softer than usual, less like the composed woman I pass in daylight, and more like someone caught in between certainty and hesitation. I didn't answer right away. Maybe I couldn't. She filled the silence with her eyes, waiting for me to either turn her away or step aside. I stepped back. She walked in like she wasn't sure if she should, hands tugging at her sleeves, not meeting my gaze until the door clicked shut behind us. The apartment was too quiet, every sound exaggerated. The hum of the fridge, the faint creak of floorboards under her bare feet. I wanted to ask why me, but the question stuck in my throat. Instead, I mumbled, "Do you want tea or something?" A stupid offer at midnight, but I needed to fill the space. Her lips curved into a small, amused, almost smile. Tea at this hour would keep me awake. I laughed too quickly, rubbing the back of my neck. She sank into the couch, tucking one leg beneath her. The sweater slipped again, bearing more skin than felt accidental. I sat across from her, though too far for what my body wanted. The air between us pressed heavy, like something waiting. She looked around my small apartment, then back at me. "It's quiet here." "I don't know if that's a good thing," I said. Her eyes lingered on mine a beat too long. Sometimes quiet is exactly what you need. The way she said it, soft, deliberate, made me forget the words I meant to follow with. Her hand brushed against the cushion beside her, fingers restless, like they wanted to reach but stopped themselves. I leaned forward without thinking, elbows on my knees. "You could have called someone else." Her gaze dropped, then lifted again. I didn't want to. Something in my chest tightened. I caught the way she shifted, like the truth of that confession sat uncomfortably even with her. Her knuckles pressed into the fabric of her sweater, holding it close. I noticed every detail, the faint tremble in her hand, the way her breathing slowed before she spoke again. "You don't mind, do you?" she asked. My throat was dry. "No, not at all." She exhaled, almost a laugh, almost relief. Then silence again. Not empty silence, something charged, thick with everything unsaid. I felt it in the way she tilted her head, in the way her eyes moved from my face to the space beside her on the couch. I shifted closer. Not too much, just enough that her perfume, faint, floral, like something clinging to memory, slid into me. She glanced down at my hand, resting near hers, and for a moment her fingers twitched like they might close the gap. But they didn't. We sat like that, inches apart, drowning in a stillness that felt louder than words. My pulse hammered against my wrist, and I swore she could see it. She turned slightly, her knee brushing against mine. Light, fleeting, but enough to set fire to the air. Her lips parted, as if she was about to say something. And then came the knock at my door. The second one that night. The knock froze us both. For a second, I thought she might pull away, stand, gather her sweater like armor and leave. But she didn't. She looked at me, eyes searching, waiting to see if I'd move first. I rose slowly, my hand brushing her knee in the motion. The touch was quick, but enough to make her breath catch. I pretended not to notice, though the sound stayed lodged in my chest. When I opened the door, it was only the neighbor from across the hall, asking if I'd heard strange noises earlier. I muttered something about pipes, about being tired. By the time I closed the door again, the hallway was empty, and she was still there, on my couch, watching me like I'd been gone too long. "You live alone," she said quietly. Not a question, more like she was confirming what she already knew. "Yeah." Her gaze dropped to her hands, twisting together. "It's easier that way, isn't it?" I hesitated. "Sometimes. Doesn't mean it's not quiet." The words seemed to press on her. She looked older in that moment, not in years, but in weight. A kind of loneliness she carried like a second skin. I sat back down, closer this time. "What about you?" Her smile was small, almost bitter. "I was married. A long time ago." She glanced at the floor, then back at me. "That ended. Then there was someone else. Short. Nothing that mattered." She shrugged, but it was forced, like she wanted to dismiss it, but couldn't quite. "And after that, just work. Just keeping busy." Her voice trembled only once, but I caught it. I wanted to ask why she came to me, of all people, but maybe the answer was already there. In the way her eyes lingered, as if she was both daring me to see her and terrified that I did. The age gap stretched between us like something neither of us named. She wore it on her shoulders. I felt it in the way I second-guessed every word. "You're staring," she said suddenly, breaking the silence. I looked away, heat rising. "Sorry." But she didn't sound offended. More curious. "What do you see?" I swallowed, then shook my head. Nothing I should say. Her laugh was soft, almost sad. That's the thing about saying nothing. It usually means too much. She leaned closer, just slightly, and her sweater brushed against my arm. The fabric was warm, carrying her scent. My pulse picked up, but I forced my body still, afraid to betray how much I noticed. Her hand moved, hesitated, then rested lightly on my shoulder. It wasn't a heavy touch, barely there, but the weight of it was more than I could bear. Her thumb shifted, a slow, thoughtless motion, and it felt like the room tilted toward her. I turned to meet her eyes. She didn't move away. The silence stretched, thick and fragile. I could feel her breath near my face, uneven, waiting, and she whispered, "You shouldn't look at me like that." But she didn't take her hand back. Her hand still lingered on my shoulder when the sharp buzz of her phone cut through the silence. She flinched, pulling it back as if burned. On the coffee table, the screen lit up. "Diana, work." She stared at it, jaw tight, then pressed it face down without answering. The air shifted. What had felt fragile and intimate now carried a weight of something dangerous. I couldn't help asking, "Shouldn't you?" "No," she said too quickly. Then softer, "Not now." Her knee brushed mine again, accidental but not corrected. My heart drummed against the pause, every second daring me closer. I wanted to lean in, to taste the space between us, but guilt cut sharp in my chest. She must have seen it in my eyes. "You know people would talk." I nodded, words stuck somewhere between my throat and lungs. She gave me a look, half warning, half plea, that only made the silence ache more. A knock at the window startled us both. I turned fast, but it was only the wind rattling against loose panes. She laughed nervously, pressing a hand to her chest. The sound of her relief was soft, human, reminding me that she wasn't untouchable, not the way she always seemed. The sound pulled me closer, without thought. I shifted, leaning in until our shoulders nearly touched. Her breath brushed my cheek, warm and trembling. She didn't move back. "You're too young," she whispered, voice breaking like it betrayed her. I wanted to argue, to tell her the numbers didn't matter, that nothing felt more certain than her in this moment. But the words stayed locked inside. Instead, I reached for the empty mug beside her, brushing her fingers as I picked it up. The touch was fleeting, clumsy, but the way her hand paused, hovering over mine, made it feel deliberate. We sat suspended in that moment, mugs and excuses forgotten. Another buzz from her phone broke the silence. This time, she didn't flip it over. She just closed her eyes. "I should go." My chest tightened. "If that's what you want." She looked at me then, long enough that my resolve almost broke. Her lips parted as if to explain, but no words came. She stood, smoothing her sweater, pulling the loose fabric tight across her chest. For a second I thought she was leaving. But when I rose too, she froze halfway to the door. We stood face to face, inches apart, the quiet pressing down harder than any sound. I felt the heat of her body radiating across the gap, the faint scent of her perfume wrapping itself around me. Her hand twitched at her side. Mine did too. The distance between us was barely a breath. I could see the curve of her lips, the shadow beneath her lashes, the pulse in her throat. And though neither of us moved, it felt like falling forward, drawn closer by something neither of us could fight. She didn't leave. Her hand hovered over the doorknob, knuckles white, sweater slipping down her arm. Then she let go, turning back toward me with an expression I'd never seen before, half defiance, half surrender. "I can't keep pretending this doesn't exist," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the room like glass. My breath caught. "What doesn't?" She gave me a look sharp enough to silence me. "Don't make me say it." The space between us collapsed. She stepped forward, and suddenly we were too close. Her shoulder brushing my chest, her scent filling the air, the edge of her hair tickling my jaw when she tilted her head. I lifted a hand before I could stop myself, brushing a loose strand from her face. My fingers trembled, not from uncertainty, but from the unbearable certainty of wanting. Her skin warmed under my touch. And though she could have stepped back, she didn't. Instead, she leaned into it. Her forehead nearly touched mine, our breaths mixing, ragged and shallow. My voice was low, uneven. "Tell me to stop." She closed her eyes. "I can't." That admission lodged deep in my chest. Every beat of my heart seemed louder than the last. My hand slipped down, resting lightly at the curve of her neck, my thumb brushing the soft skin just below her ear. She shivered, almost imperceptibly, but I felt it like lightning. "You'll regret this," she whispered, though the way her fingers curled into my shirt betrayed her words. "Then let me regret it." Her eyes opened again, wide, vulnerable, searching mine for something neither of us could name. I could feel her pulse under my hand, racing to match mine. The room had shrunk to nothing but her, the warmth of her body against me, the tremor in her breath, the gravity pulling us closer. Her lips parted, a fraction, enough to make my resolve crack. But then she pulled back, only an inch, her chest rising fast. "People will hate me for this." I shook my head, leaning in anyway. "Let them." Her hand lifted, hesitated, then cupped my cheek with a tenderness that broke me open. For a moment, the world stilled. Just the two of us, suspended between choice and consequence. Her thumb brushed across my skin, slow, deliberate. My lips moved closer, almost grazing hers, heat sparking in the narrow space that remained. Everything in me screamed to close the gap. And then, a sudden sound. A sharp knock at her phone, vibrating violently against the table, lighting up the dark room with her ex's name. She froze. We stayed there, breath to breath, lips almost touching, both of us caught at the edge of a moment that, once crossed, would never let us return. Her phone kept buzzing on the table, her ex's name flashing again and again. She didn't touch it, didn't even look. But I did. "You told me it was over," I said, voice sharper than I meant. Her eyes snapped to mine, wide, defensive. "It is." "Then why does he still call like this?" Silence. She pressed her lips together, shoulders drawing tight as if bracing against the accusation. "Finally," she said, "because I didn't tell him the whole truth." The words dropped between us, heavy and dangerous. I stepped back, needing space, but the small room didn't give it. My hand brushed against hers as I moved past, and the contact only made my pulse jump harder. "What truth?" I asked. Her hands trembled where she gripped her sweater. That I wasn't lonely. That I wasn't waiting for him to come back. She looked at me then, eyes raw, shining with something close to defiance. "That it was you." The air left my lungs. I wanted to move closer, to take her face in my hands, to crush the silence with a kiss that would erase all the doubt. But the admission was too sharp, too real. "You can't say things like that," I whispered. "Why?" She shot back, stepping toward me. Her body brushed mine, barely, but enough to feel the heat radiating from her skin. "Because it makes this real? Because it means we can't hide behind excuses anymore." I couldn't answer. My throat closed. Every instinct told me to pull away, to protect us both, but my body betrayed me, leaning closer instead. Her breath caught, quick and uneven. She lifted her hand, almost touched my chest, then pulled back like the closeness burned. "You're too young," she said again, softer now, but it carried no conviction. "Then why can't you stay away?" My voice cracked with it, raw and desperate. We stood in the narrow space between the couch and the table, our bodies so close we had to brush against each other just to move. Every step she took back drew me forward, as if pulled by some invisible cord. The phone finally went silent, the apartment falling into a stillness that was louder than noise. She whispered, "If anyone finds out, they won't. You don't know that." Her hand brushed against mine as she tried to pass, and I caught it without meaning to. She froze, trembling, our fingers tangled in a grip that said more than either of us dared. Her eyes searched mine, all the fear and longing twisted together. Then, with a breathless exhale, she said, "Then we can't stop now." The decision hung in the air, irreversible, electric, dangerous. And I didn't let go of her hand. Her hand stayed tangled in mine, her pulse racing beneath my fingers. Neither of us moved, but everything around us seemed to tilt forward, as if the room itself demanded an answer. She spoke first, her voice low, ragged. "If we do this, there's no going back." I stepped closer, until the tips of our shoes nearly touched. "Then we don't go back." Her breath shivered between us, her eyes darting to my mouth before she forced them away. She shook her head, almost convincing herself. I've spent years keeping lines in place. If I cross this one, you already have, I whispered. The truth of it made her falter. She pressed a hand to my chest, meaning to push me away, but left it there instead. I felt her fingers tremble against my heartbeat, and I covered her hand with mine, holding it still. The air thickened. My forehead brushed against hers, the contact so slight, yet overwhelming. I could smell the faint sweetness of her perfume, the warmth of her skin. You'll regret me, she murmured. I leaned in, my lips grazing the edge of her hairline, close enough to feel the heat rise in her. I won't. Her eyes closed. For a moment, it seemed she'd step back, retreat into safety. But instead, she leaned against me, her body fitting to mine as though it had been waiting too long. My arms rose instinctively, holding her, not tight, just enough to keep her there, enough to show her I wouldn't let her fall. The silence pulsed with everything unsaid. My cheek brushed against hers, the lightest scrape of skin. My voice was barely a breath in her ear. Tell me this isn't what you want, and I'll let go. Her fingers tightened in my shirt. She didn't tell me to let go. Instead, she lifted her head, eyes fierce now, glistening. I've wanted this longer than I'll ever admit. And with that, the hesitation broke. Her lips hovered so close to mine it hurt not to close the distance. The tension was unbearable, messy, human, our breaths uneven, our hands clumsy as they found each other. The fear was still there, threaded through the wanting, but it didn't matter anymore. She kissed me, not neat, not careful. A broken, desperate kiss that told me every word she tried not to say. I answered with the same hunger, the same surrender. When we finally parted, foreheads pressed together, breathing hard, there was no doubt left. No excuses. Her voice was shaky, but steady in meaning. Now you know. I nodded, unable to speak, because I did. We understood each other fully now, what it meant, what it risked, what it promised. And there was no turning back. We stayed close after the kiss, too close to pretend anymore. Her forehead pressed to mine, our breathing uneven, our hands still tangled together like neither of us could risk letting go. For a long while, we didn't speak. The silence wasn't heavy this time. It was steady, full, like the kind of quiet you only share when everything has already been said without words. Finally, she pulled back just enough to look at me. Her hair fell across her cheek, and I brushed it aside, slow, careful, not wanting the moment to end. Her eyes softened. This isn't simple. I don't want simple, I said. She smiled faintly, a mix of sadness and relief. You'll change your mind someday. You'll want someone younger, someone who doesn't carry as much history as I do. I shook my head, pressing her hand tighter in mine. I don't want someone else's history. I want you. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she let out a shaky laugh, the kind that comes when the walls you've held up for years finally crack. She leaned against me then, resting her head on my shoulder. The weight of her felt right, solid, grounding. I wrapped an arm around her, pulling her in closer. She let me. For the first time all night, there was no hesitation. We sat there in the dim light of my apartment, her warmth pressed against me, our hands intertwined. Every fear, the neighbors talking, the phone calls, the age gap, still existed. They didn't vanish. But none of it felt stronger than this. She whispered, "Do you know how long I've wanted to feel this again?" I turned my head, brushing my lips against her hair. "Then don't let it go." She closed her eyes, and I felt her body finally relax against mine. Not in surrender, but in trust. Time slipped quietly. The world outside didn't matter, whether it judged us, whether it understood. What mattered was the way she reached for my hand and laced her fingers through mine like she was anchoring herself. I kissed her forehead, soft, lingering, and she tilted her face up just enough to meet my eyes. There was no fear left in them, only clarity. "This is ours now," she said. I nodded. Ours. We stayed that way, holding on to each other, not needing more than the closeness we already had. No grand promises, no declarations shouted into the night. Just the simple, undeniable truth of us, here, together. And for the first time, neither of us wanted to run. Speech Balloon, did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?